The most typical of all silhouettes in Africa is not the giraffe or the classic flat-top thorn tree. It is the tall, castle-like shape of the termite mound. The insects that build these mounds don't look very interesting. They certainly don't look like a creature that dominates Africa, both in terms of numbers and their effect upon the landscape. The elephant will eat only 10% of this tree it has pushed down. The rest will be devoured by termites, but they exist in numbers that defy the imagination. There are over 1 million wildebeest on the Serengeti. Even when they're spread out over the plains like this, it's a figure you can never really grasp. Yet to termites, 1 million is no more than one rather small family. Termites are blind, but they create some of the world's most graceful architecture. They are no bigger than match heads, yet the homes they build weigh tens of tons and may be over 20 feet tall. The pyramids and man's other great works are pathetic in comparison. The mounds are remarkable in their own right, but also they are focal points in the bush country, and they attract a great variety of visitors. Creatures like the aardvark and the aardwolf, and a whole alphabet of strange and specialized animals who come to the mound and call it home. This is the story of those mounds, of the extraordinary insect society that builds them, and the unlikely collection of creatures that use them as a source of food and shelter. This is the story of those incredible castles of clay. Deep inside the fortress, living in almost total darkness, is a complex society of several million insects. Termites are often called white ants, but they are not ants at all. Their nearest relatives are, in fact, cockroaches, and they have been on this earth for at least 100 million years. The nest is a series of chambers of varying size and purpose, supported by graceful columns and connected by sweeping walkways and tunnels. Their architecture is freeform and based on the arch, with none of the repetitive honeycomb patterns produced by other insect builders, such as bees and wasps. The society is based on a strict division of labor, and each individual plays a clearly defined role in the life of the nest. About 2% of the population are soldiers, equipped with massive heads and powerful jaws. They come in 2 sizes, major and minor, and all of them are sterile females. The workers come in 2 sizes and 2 sexes, and they too are all sterile. The minor workers perform household chores, while the majors are responsible for construction and maintenance. They are the world's greatest builders. Using their saliva as cement, they assemble, grain by grain, some of the most extraordinary structures in nature. Termite mounds come in a great variety of shapes, sizes, and colors. Where there is heavy rainfall, they deflect it with their own umbrellas. Where it is oven hot, they carry off the heat through tall chimneys. In between those 2 extreme forms, depending upon the climate, the soil, and the species doing the building, it seems that almost anything goes. Scaled up to human dimensions, a 20-foot termite mound would be 2.5 miles high, 10 times the height of our tallest skyscraper. Even an average mound would be many times the size and weight of the pyramids. The classic mounds are the 10-foot high castles found on the savannah, and it is these Gothic towers that we are going to take a closer look at. The heart of a termite colony is a cell that is built like a nuclear-age military command post. Buried a couple of feet below the center of the mound, it has massively thick walls, is suspended in space on pillars, and can be entered only through a row of tiny portholes round the rim. Easily defended, this is the nerve center of the mound, the royal cell. Permanently sealed inside it are the king and queen. Except that she has eyes, the front end of a termite queen is not so different from that of her subjects. But from the waist down, it's another story. 4 inches long and as thick as a man's thumb, she is thousands of times heavier than the workers who attend her. Beside their queen, the workers look like a ground crew handling a half-inflated airship. The king is much larger than the workers, but is still tiny alongside the queen. In fact, it takes him 15 seconds to walk from one end of his wife to the other. The queen is just an enormous egg-laying machine. Every day, and she lives for up to 15 years, she lays almost a third of her own weight in eggs, an incredible 30,000 eggs a day. As the eggs are laid, the workers collect them and carry them off, and with one arriving every few seconds, it is an endless task. Because they are sealed in, the king and queen must be fed by workers who regurgitate their own last meal. The soldiers must be fed too, because their jaws are so specialized for fighting that they are unable to feed themselves. The workers also exchange food when they meet, but there's more to it than that. The saliva of each termite contains a mixture of chemicals whose exact combination is determined by the condition of the mound and the needs of the society. The information is passed from mouth to mouth through the colony, and when the queen is fed, she receives a chemical cocktail that gives her a detailed report on the state of her nation. Like the centralized command post that she is, the queen takes in and processes all this information, and then from the other end, she exudes the chemical equivalent of a computer printout that contains all the instructions needed for the running of the mound. For instance, suppose ants attack the colony and a lot of soldiers are killed. In their meetings with each other, the termites register in a purely chemical way that they are making fewer contacts than usual with soldiers, and deep in her cell, the queen receives this information. Nobody knows whether she alters the eggs before she lays them, or whether her chemicals affect the eggs later, through the saliva of the workers who carry them. What is certain is that the next batch of eggs to hatch are mostly soldiers, so that the population is restored to its proper balance. All this mutual feeding is exploited by minute creatures called springtails that spend their lives riding on the backs of the termites. At each exchange of food, the springtail sidles forward and helps itself to a tiny share. Springtails are quite democratic. From queen to commoner is just a tiny hop. So, although she's imprisoned for life, the queen's influence reaches every one of her millions of subjects. The king has an important role too. If he's removed, the queen soon starts to lay infertile eggs. They must mate fairly frequently, but how they manage is one of the many secrets still guarded deep inside the royal cell. Above the queen's cell is a labyrinth of interconnected chambers that forms the main part of the nest. This is the nursery area, where the workers make neat stacks of new-laid eggs. The eggs take about 3 weeks to hatch, and the nursery is always packed with tiny young. Termites don't have a larval stage like most insects. What emerges from the eggs is a perfectly formed animal. no bigger than a pinhead, a delicate miniature in spun glass. The workers have a full-time job keeping the young clean and well-fed, and a hungry baby termite begs for food as appealingly as any puppy. These new generations make up almost 50% of the population. To gather food for all these mouths, the workers dig tunnels that radiate out as far as 50 yards from the mound. When they find food, such as this fallen weaver bird's nest, they come to the surface and in a few hours cover it with a shell of mud. When it has been sealed over and hidden from predators, the workers can feed in safety. The inhabitants of a large mound remove about half a ton of vegetation litter a year. But they're not just keeping Africa tidy. Particularly in the drier areas, the flow of energy will be slowed down because vegetation takes so long to decay. But the termites very quickly eat it. In turn, they themselves are eaten by a great variety of predators. As a result, the nutrients that would otherwise be locked up in the dead wood are rapidly recycled into the system, making it a richer and more varied place. Grass and wood contain a high proportion of cellulose, rich in energy, but indigestible even to a termite. So the workers chew it all up, and back inside the mound they use it to build convoluted hanging gardens that have the texture and smell of damp cork. The crop in these termite gardens is mushrooms. The mushrooms produce an enzyme that can break down the cellulose into a digestible form. A hungry termite first eats some of the garden material and then nibbles on a mushroom, thus mixing in its stomach one of the most indigestible meals in nature and a magic means of digesting it. The termites cannot live without the mushrooms, and the mushrooms only grow on the gardens created for them by the termites. It's one of the most remarkable associations in nature. The fungus gardens grow in a mass of bun-shaped cells situated above and around the nurseries. Housing and food are now taken care of. But there's another basic problem to be solved. Several million active little bodies, plus the growing process in the fungus gardens, give rise to a lot of heat, to which termites are very sensitive. So they build an air conditioning system, which takes the form of a series of chimneys running through the mound. Warm air rises through these chimneys and is replaced by cool air entering at the base of the mound. If it's a hot wind blowing, the workers go down as much as 150 feet to the water table. At the bottom of these wells, the workers fill their tiny bellies, climb back up to the nest, and spread the water on the walls, so that now the nest is cooled by evaporation. Their control over the system is very precise. By opening or closing the smaller chimneys, and by varying the dampness of the walls, they keep the temperature constant to within 1 degree of a comfortable 85 degrees Fahrenheit. But there are complications. The air conditioning system provides a perfect, ready-made home for an army of uninvited guests. Soon after dawn, a pack of dwarf mongooses starts to come awake. The youngsters are up first, and their play soon wakes up the adults, who come out to catch the morning sun. Before long, the termite tenement is alive with them. As much as 10 gallons of water a day evaporate from the chimneys of a big mound. Well over 1 million termite bellyfuls. The chimneys are full of warm, moist air, making them a comfortable retreat for cold-blooded reptiles. The most common is the monitor lizard, who grows to over 5 feet long and often shares a mound with a family of mongooses. He would eat a mongoose if he could catch one, but in the confines of the chimney he can't move easily, so it is safe for the youngsters to investigate him. Another animal that often uses termite mounds is the jackal, who hides her pups down the chimneys. It's safer than an ordinary burrow. The mud walls of the mound are like concrete, and no predator could possibly dig the puppies out. Having small creatures live in the air conditioning doesn't bother the termites. The insects themselves don't live in the chimneys. They're purely for ventilation. And if one happens to be blocked by a visitor, like an elephant shrew, the termites will open up another. In odd corners of the tunnels are little piles of dead insects, which sometimes move. They are the macabre camouflage of the assassin bug, who covers himself with the bodies of his victims. This half-inch creature pounces on termites and other insects in the chimneys and kills them with an injection from his sharp proboscis. He then reverses the flow, sucks his prey dry, and adds its hollow shell to the gruesome collection on his back. The dwarf mongooses are by far the most common of the mound's squatter population. They live in packs of up to 20 animals and are opportunists, feeding on almost anything they can find. One of the youngsters discovers a quail's nest, but he can't open his mouth quite wide enough to break them, and while he's trying, his larger relatives keep making off with them. Soon there's just one left, and he'll fight anyone to keep it. Inevitably, he loses it. But he keeps up the chase, and a broken egg, like half a loaf, is better than nothing at all. The monitor lizard, being cold-blooded, stays in the mound until it's well warmed up by the sun, and then it too sets out hunting. Like the mongooses, it eats anything that comes its way: insects, eggs, small mammals, or fellow reptiles. Anything that tastes edible to that ceaselessly flickering tongue. The middle of the day is rest time for the mongooses, for the adults anyway. The youngsters never seem to run out of energy. baby mongooses are just what the spitting cobra would like to find when it comes to the mound to search for food. But the mongooses have spotted him. And now the monitor too is returning to the mound. Compare the tension and excitement of the mongooses to the grave behavior of the instinct-driven reptiles who go about mortal combat as if they were sleepwalking. The spitting cobra is well named. Its fangs are like hypodermic needles with forward-facing holes. By violently throwing its mouth open, it squeezes the venom sacs and shoots its poison for up to 6 feet. It would temporarily blind a human, but the monitor is not impressed. The lizard slides a membrane over its eyes to protect them when it is spat at, but it can't protect itself from being bitten, and although it's completely immune to the cobra's deadly venom, it doesn't particularly like it. The lizard's technique is brutally effective. It simply beats the snake insensible and then crushes the life out of it. And as soon as it's dead, it will be swallowed whole, inch by battered inch. One by one, the mongooses slide down into the chimneys and settle down for the night. It's been quite a day. Tomorrow will see the beginning of a whole new season.